Hello and welcome to another installment of the forum. Today is kind of a special edition, and some of you might know that I've been on the road walking or hiking through Germany for the new project Demokratie Live. And this is not my home with the nice tapestry, but rental we're staying in right now. And I'm very happy Jason and Anthony can make it today because Anthony is also not at home. But you want to chip in real quick? Where are you right now, Anthony?
Oh, I'm in Wisconsin. This is actually my where I grew up. So I'm actually on our family's farm in eastern Wisconsin. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, I think actually that's good to know for this particular conversation because it explains why you have a bit of a different background. I'm still. And Jason is
Still New York. Yeah.
still in
Just
New
yeah.
York,
Yep.
suffering the heat and being
The
excited about the Knicks.
yeah, Knicks and soccer.
Yes, which starts today. World Cup starts
That's
today. So,
it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I actually probably looking to leave for the entire duration of the World Cup, but we'll see. Um,
it's, I think you're exaggerating. It's going to be fun. So, yes, this time we have a bit of a different setup for the conversation because it's not so much a discussion, maybe more of a Q&A type of thing. So just to give everybody a bit of a quick intro in what Demokratie Life is. The idea is basically that I'm walking once around Germany for the foreseeable future. And subtitle of the project is Walking Through Germany, Talking to People. So the basic notion behind it is that if you have maybe read some of the articles we published in the cable or watched some of the videos we've done in the past, when it's about the sort of talking about the crisis of the West, that one of the big issues that is bedeviling democracy these days is that we're sort of losing touch with one another. We don't talk as much with one another as we used to. We're more sort of sucked into virtual reality, hanging out on our phones, and there's all kinds of sort of data supporting that. And we think that this is a problematic trend in some respects because talking with one another is sort of the basis for democracy and for a healthy society in many ways. So that's sort of the motivation. I'm also going to say this project is still developing as I literally go on. And I've been now walking for a little bit more than 4 weeks through Germany, starting from Cologne, going east back to the River Rhine, and then going south. So that's where we're at. Maybe we'll start with Anthony. Anthony had a very good question.
Oh,
Or
okay.
anything.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a very interesting project. I have a bunch of questions, honestly. I mean, I would say I'll say a comment and then I'll ask a question. So, like myself, I grew up I'm actually on our family's farm. I grew up here. It's funny because like when I was growing up, I would have friends who would go camping, for example, and I would ask my parents. I would say, "Oh, maybe we should go camping," and my dad would say, "You want to go camp and go outside." And so I never went camping. I never even seen the allure of it. And we actually have, so our family's farm is 240 acres. It's like 110 hectares. There's 40 acres that's forest. That's just forest. That's where we hunt and other things. So, and I used to play when I was a kid. So that's like when I was growing up, a big part of my childhood was actually just being in the forest. So that's just a bit about me. So like that's why the comment, Tim and I were having like an email exchange, and I was like, "Oh, you're hiking." I was like, "It seems like a very urban thing to do. Something. This is something that city people do, to reconnect with nature. You know, it's like a mythological regrounding or something, you know. I always hear people in California like, I got to recharge my batteries. I'm going to go camping. And I'm like, why would you do that? That sounds stressful. You're going to take kids, you're going to cook over a flame and not shower for multiple days. That sounds like work. So that was my comment. But it comes from, I don't know, or I'm wrong. I mean, I imagine there's plenty of rural people who camp too. So I don't know any, by the way. So then I also, that's like a comment, but then the question, I was just thinking I'm just curious, what's going on? Are you meeting people and are you talking to them? And what's been the reception for what you're doing?
Yes, so very good. I love the comment. It's really very on point. I think it's a very valid, well, potential critique. I'm not sure even if it's a critique. I don't think so. But I actually, just to give a little bit of background on myself, I used to go camping. I think I've been camping since I was like 8 or 9 years old, with like youth organizations, Catholic youth organization, then the Boy Scouts, and then I was doing the youth groups of the German Mountaineering Club. I always, one of the fun stories is when I was like 8 years old, the first time I was camping, I stayed up as late as I could, and I woke up and there was like blue sky above me because the tent had flown away with a storm that night. But yes, you have a very good point. It's it's exhausting. It's work in some sense to camp. And so there is a good question of why we do that. I mean, part of the idea, and again, so the project is becoming more and more clear, or maybe even not clear as I move on and continue, walk. Part of the idea is also for it to be a bit of an experiment, right? Because I've been also writing a lot about sort of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. We've done a hiking group. We said like, okay, going to nature is like sort of not recharging your batteries, but it's giving you it's slowing things down and you coming back in touch with sort of reality when you're spending a lot of time in virtual reality, which seems very stressful for a lot of people and causing, I mean, it seems to cause anxiety for a lot of people and so on. So in a sense, it's a bit of an experiment to see if what those guys in the 19th century were talking about. And it's not just Emerson and Thoreau, it's also Goethe, who's been traveling actually the same area that I'm traveling around. If those guys and what they said about the connection between humans and nature, if there's actually something to it, and if there's maybe some benefit to slowing things down, or if it's maybe actually, well, opening some avenues towards greater individual freedom. That's very, very tall order, of course. And so far, I gotta say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if if that's the case. But before we can discuss this more, actually, I think. But to the question, the reception has been very positive. Let's be careful there. No, it's been positive. When people ask you or ask me, and that's the thing about I'm walking alone. Sonia is joining me, ideally once a week or so I can like also use my laptop to work and write up stuff. But walking alone is important because then people automatically start to ask you, hey, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? Like I was literally happened to me in a bar. I walked in and it was like there were 6 people and I was for an hour I was there just having a beer, and I went to the bathroom and I came back and the owner was like, hey, I asked everybody here, nobody knows you. What are you doing here? Right? And then you start talking and explaining the project, and oftentimes you just say, I'm walking through Germany and talking to people because we don't talk enough anymore with one another. And usually that immediately hits something with people. And I would say the vast majority agrees strongly that we're spending too much time on our cell phones. Then I'm pulling out my cell phone, and they are too. So there's something, right? There's another question. But no, it's there's some days when I just walk and when I also don't want to talk to people, because that is also exhausting. And the walking itself is exhausting. It's been painful at times. And then you just want to like set up your tent and maybe take a shower, get some food. But there have been days when I was like, oh, I haven't like had enough conversations. And then all of a sudden I had 5 different encounters in a single day, like new people. And I talked to them for 15 minutes to up to 2 hours. That was like actually the day when we rescheduled. I just met people. So yeah. So to answer that, Jason, what
I'm
do you
curious
think?
about like the roads in like Germany, like because my understanding is like the way like national parks and stuff in the U.S. work is very different from like Europe. Like, are you traveling like old roads, like the old Roman roads, the old pilgrim roads, like Colonia, right? That was a Roman colony.
Yes.
Yeah. So is
Yes.
it like
Yeah, there is a vast network. So Germany is kind of maybe the most suited place for this kind of project because we have a lot of long distance trails, and that those are often very well maintained or like mapped, and you find all kinds of information. There's a big infrastructure for hiking. A lot of those then coincide with the Camino, which is the trails going to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. They all start here, so I'm seeing the sign for the Camino trails. The Romans, yes, I walked. I left the official trail. Because as I said in my article, I was like, well, I can't do it. I don't, especially not at those temperatures. And then I walked along the Rhine, the river, and this is where the Romans, yes, basically walked on. And this city here is on the left, on the west bank of the river. So the Romans were here. It was kind of like a border for them. So their old path. One thing that's actually, I think, thing that's good to understand for Americans, and I just talked with someone about this, is that in Germany you're not allowed by law to just set up your tent in the forest. You can't do that, and you actually get in serious trouble with the police if you do that. So you have to use official campgrounds. Which is kind of a bummer, but I guess it's also because those pristine places of nature, if there are any left in Germany, they don't appreciate that. Tons of campers pitching their tents there.
is there like a lot of traffic there, or is it like? Because I'm trying to get a sense of like, is this more like the Appalachian Trail, or is it more kind of like Great Basin National Park, where like literally nobody goes to?
No, there is a lot of people here. I mean, we're in Germany. I mean, there were days I skipped basically 2 legs of the Rheinsteig, the trail, the famous trail, by just cutting across a mountain. And there is an app which I use. I didn't want to use so much, but it's very, very good and very helpful to get across that mountain. And there was nobody, like all day. There was nobody. And I met a deer and a fox and some other animals, but there was no humans. I've met 6 people who've done the long distance trail total so far in 4 weeks. So it's not a big thing necessarily. people do like day trips, right? And again, some of the legs are very exhausting. Like, so.
Makes me when you're talking about it, it made me. There's two things I was thinking of. Actually, it was like I think it was actually Werner Herzog. So Werner Herzog was making Fitzcarraldo, that movie back in I think it was in the 80s, and he had all these problems when he's making that movie, and he tried to. I think the Fitzcarraldo movie's about, I forget, these explorers, and they're trying to haul a ship over. There's a place where they can't haul a ship, so they have to like actually drag it over land somewhere. So it's a true story, and he recreates it for folks that haven't seen the movie. And he's doing it, and there's all kinds of errors. And then there's these outtakes from the movie, and it's something that Werner Herzog says in other movies too. He says, nature is chaos. Nature is violent. He's just like the opposite of what you were saying. And it made me think, not to the same degree. He was also complaining about his movie, but it made me think about like just a conversation this morning I had with my mom. I was going to ask you about animals because like last night I went for a run, which is also a city people thing to do, but I went for a run and we came across a skunk, and my wife stopped to take a picture. And I was like, no, bad idea. One, it's a skunk. But second is that if an animal, skunks are nocturnal, and if they come out during the day, they're either defending themselves or they're sick. Right? There's like, you don't see raccoons also during the day. Why? Because again, they're nocturnal. And if they come out during the day, they're again sick, or you're near where they're living, right? Like, and we've had times we have a neighbor down the road who lives near a swamp, and my mom was telling me about how they have to essentially, like, they're surrounded by snakes. Like there's tons of snakes, and they're infiltrating just because they live near a swamp, and so they have to kill snakes quite often just because that's like to manage where they live. That's part of the experience, part of the nature experience, right? So I think it's really. I was going to ask you about animals more, just like you mentioned deer, fox. Fox are. I've only seen maybe a handful of foxes, and like they're not very, present. But I was just curious what else you've run into and so on.
Well, first of all, about your point, I mean, yes, nature is chaotic. I'm not sure if nature is chaotic necessarily, but I'm not going to say like, oh, it's all wonderful in nature. Far from it. Actually, there was before I started the project, a friend of ours who Jason also knows, he was like, when I told him I'm going to do this hike, he was like, oh, you're going to be an influencer. I'm like, oh God, no. Right. But this is actually I've met a bunch of people who've done like long projects outdoors on the campgrounds. You kind of, and there was a Dutch guy who was cycling to Rome, right? Because he was like hanging out with his friends one night. He was over 60 and had one beer too many and was like, I'm gonna ride my bike to Rome. And then they're like, okay, you're on. And he's like, gotta do it. But he was saying like, hey, the people you meet on the campgrounds, and this is why I'm careful to say like what was the reception to the project so far, is they are already a particular group of people, right? So it's basically in a bubble too. I mean, I've been occasionally also in restaurants, and they're different people. So, but it's definitely a particular type of people who you meet on these hikes. Nature in general, yes. I mean, this is part of the idea to kind of feel. We're so getting used to in our sort of colonized life world that we can sort of do anything we want. We can adjust temperatures, we can go inside, indoors, and once you're in nature and you have that sort of, you're on that trail and you got to get there and you're on foot and there's nothing around and it rains, then that sucks. It's not great. It's not fun. But it's actually kind of like the point to feel that sort of resistance again, because the virtual world doesn't give you that at all. You're like, oh, it's endless. You scroll, and people just get lost there. And it's, but it's not, I don't want to glorify it at all, right? I mean, there's these people, there's these I've seen him on Instagram too. This guy who's like, yeah, hiking for 7 years straight and then giving life wisdom to people. And I'm like, oh God, right? No, it's not just fun, not at all. But
I was gonna
yeah,
ask.
maybe some things are also not fun. I mean, you're a farmer, so I don't have to tell you that, right?
I was gonna say, what's the story with hunting and fishing in Germany? Because like I'm thinking like you saw a deer. Depending on who you are, did you like admire the deer or did you think, oh, I could eat that deer? It's true. It's like
no,
No, I mean,
go ahead, Jason.
oh no, I mean, I think, yeah, like for me, like hiking is like I go hike to do fish and astronomy, right? Just to get dark places and stuff like that. It's like hiking is a means to an end for me for the most part nowadays. Like one, because I don't really like camping anymore because it kills my back because I'm getting old. But but more, it's just like, yeah, like I don't know if it's like, because in the U.S. it's basically if you're on like sort of national, I mean, you can fish basically anywhere that's not private property.
Yeah,
For the most part,
this is much more regulated in Germany. So I couldn't just shoot that deer. I don't have a hunting license. I don't have a license to carry a gun at all. I don't even know how. I mean, there are people you can get it. But I would be very surprised to see somebody hiking and having a rifle with them. Like that's just not happening here. So when I saw the deer,
and regulated in the U.S. too, fishing
right.
and hunting is all, you can't fish in just random places.
Yeah, but like
Right.
like for like yeah, like if you're in like a park, like usually it's like they're usually pretty clear unless it's like a specific like you like certain species, certain times. But like I guess the other question.
Yeah.
And this is I don't know if you would know this, but like, is primitive hunting popular in Germany? Is that even a thing in Germany? Is that allowed? Like, because I know that that's a thing here in the U.S. Like
What?
primitive hunting, like either the spear or bow and arrow, or like noodling, like where you kind of grab the fish.
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, I could not. This project would be very different in the United States, of course. It's not like the Appalachian Trail, right? I mean, there's lots of people. I mean, there are the two big trails in the U.S., the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, and thousands of people go hike them. But even there, right, there are cases when people get seriously hurt, then they're far away from any civilization, when they have bear attacks or similar things, snake bites. I did go through regions where there are dangerous snakes, but they're super rare. That I will eventually. I'm going south now. I'm gonna take a short break at the end of June, and then I'm gonna continue from where I left off, going through the Black Forest and then down to Bavaria and to the east. And the Bavarian forest on the eastern border to Czech Republic, that's more wild. So there I might actually, there are wolves there, there's bear. But even there, it's not like the US. So the deer, I saw several deer running, or they just jumped away. The one time it was a bit weird or sketchy because the deer was like just chasing through the forest and there were two dogs chasing after it. So someone just didn't like have their dogs on a leash. And actually right now there's signs everywhere because it's when they have their young and trying to hide. So people are urged, particularly right now, to keep them on the leash. So that was weird seeing those two dogs chase a deer, even though the deer was twice as fast in the end. But then the dogs looked at me and I was like, oh, come on, guys. No, not me. Yeah. But you said one thing that's actually a good point, and this is going back to the, hey, this is not an influencer thing. Yes, I'm walking around Germany, and that's in some sense that's, but it's sort of a means to an end as well, the hike, right? It's trying to figure out in a way what happens when you kind of really slow down, and not just for a weekend or something, because we've done retreats with Transatlantika, right? And people have like those weekends were good, and people were like, oh yeah, this was really nice, and then they go back to their daily routines, and they'll go back to their super fast life, and they go back to like being on the screen like 8 hours a day, and then so there was no lasting effect in a way, or that was at least the impression we had. And so this is, and I have to say, it is it has a big effect on me personally. Slowing down like this, and this is why the walking matters, because you slow down and you have to sort of, yeah, you have a lot of time all of a sudden because you're walking for 8 hours a day, and then what you do is eat, and you check out the trail, the direction, you check out where you sleep, and that's it. And that does change things quite a bit. I'm not sure yet how. I'm not sure how that benefits democracy. But I have some ideas about, yeah, what it might do. But it's also I'm not Henry David Thoreau building a hut on Walden Pond, right, and staying there for 2 weeks. Even he went back, and even he went to get dinner at Emerson's house in the evening, right, and then just went back to his hut. But that was influencer style already. So.
Do you think there's like a difference between, because like I'm assuming that these are all novel trails to you, like you've never been on these before, or like it's been a long time since you've been on them, like versus kind of like the more like Kant had his routine, right? He would walk the same path every single day. Like, do you think there's a qualitative difference to it? Do you have any thoughts about that, or versus?
Wait, I'm not explaining. I'm not getting it.
Or so basically, like, because I'm assuming the route that you're taking now is novel to you, like you've never been on this kind of pathway before. Versus Kant also walked a lot, but he walked the same path every single day for basically his entire life, as long as he was able. I was wondering, like, do you think there's any difference to that? Do you feel like?
Yes. I think there is, obviously. Like, I mean, you have to, like, your senses. You are much more alert to when you walk a route you've never been walking before. I noticed something that the first, like maybe 3-4 days ago. I mean, I'm also taking a lot of rest days because I do want to meet people, encounter people. So I do go then from the campground also into the towns. I sit down there, I meet other people. But I noticed that it's maybe for the first time, like 2 days ago or so, that I was like able to kind of think while walking. Because I gotten into the routine, into the rhythm, and the pain stopped. To be honest, like the blisters stopped. I got the blisters under control. I also made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, right? And I do have a little bit of experience, but I still made a bunch of mistakes. But when you're so focused on just getting there and constantly trying to figure out, like, do I have enough water? Do I have enough food? Can I take a break? Do I have to, first of all, things are, the things you think about are very banal in a lot of ways, but you're still very occupied. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I kind of got things figured out. And yeah, I mean, the article I'm gonna publish probably before we publish this video is going to be about a weird experience, because yes, 2-3 days ago I did maybe the most spectacular hike of the entire trip so far. It's just gorgeous. Looked over the Lorelei mountain, one of the most biggest, like, historic mythological places in Germany. So there's actually mythology here. Heinrich Heine wrote a poem. There's a song about it. It's sort of like the Greek thing. The weather was beautiful. There was one castle after another. It was just so gorgeous, and I just, like, I felt good, and I was just walking. Body was fine. Everything was fine, and I actually just felt. And this is when I expected things to be like, okay, now I feel really free and I feel great, and none of that actually happened. I just felt very empty. I felt very empty, and this was a really strange and unsettling experience. And I'm still trying to figure out. Does it rain?
Has it rained? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, not a lot, but the first 2 weeks were rough, and we actually at that point, once I was given shelter basically by the people I had the conversation with in a town east of Cologne. They were like, "Hey, you can just use our guest room because it's too cold." And then as we moved on, we had other friends who gave us a shelter or let us stay with them. So it was very cold and it was raining a lot, but I've been lucky in a lot of ways. I haven't had to set up my tent during rain. That sucks. And I didn't have to take it down during rain either. But that's also, you kind of, the weather forecast is totally, it's a joke a lot of times. I mean, I don't have to tell you probably, but it's amazing if you actually really depending on the weather and then you're looking at the forecast, it's wow. But yesterday I took a rest day because I saw it coming. There was like a consistent forecast for a long number of days that there was going to be rain all day, and it was, and I avoided. It just worked out. But there will be times when it's going to rain, and I walked during the rain already too. Yeah. Why are you asking?
I mean, it's like rain. I imagine I've been in. I mean, I've had to like work in rain, and it's just, I don't know, it's odd. Rain is like it's just like I can, everything you're saying, I can imagine it, and when I'm imagining you doing it in sunlight. And like yesterday it rained here pretty hard, and we actually went down in the basement because there was a tornado touchdown, and it demolished a barn a couple miles away, and that's actually fairly common. We're not in the center. We're not in Oklahoma, the center part of the United States, but tornadoes come periodically. I mean, that's like, so I was just thinking that's not, and then, there's different kinds of rain and there's hail and all that. It's funny too, because like I said, like last week I came in here and we planted corn last week, and then if you're planting, if it's not a garden and you're planting, like you don't use water right away, right? So you have to wait for rain, or you irrigate it with machinery. But most people here where I live, like everyone in the area, and there's dozens of farmers here, you plant your corn, you plant whatever you're growing in the dirt, right? You plant it dry dirt, and then you wait for rain. And luckily around here, you usually get rain once a week, but you need a certain kind of rain too. You can't, if you get like a torrential downpour, that can be bad because it'll wash out your corn. If you get a light rain, it'll evaporate right away. So you're waiting for, and you're watching, and you're worrying. It's funny because it's like when I moved to California, I had friends say, in the Midwest, all you do is talk about the weather. And on the West Coast, all you do is talk about traffic. And it's the same kind of thing. Like these forces that you're dependent upon, but that determine like what you do. But I mean, they're very different things, traffic and weather. I don't know about New York. I imagine it's similar to California.
Yeah, I guess there's that. Like, I'm trying to think, because it's like, one of the weird things about modern society, right, is that we have this bubble where we think we can control lots of things and avoid lots of things. And like, obviously, yeah, when you're farming or hiking, you don't no longer have that. Like, and I wonder to what extent that's a good thing, a bad thing. Like, because I think part of the reason why like city folk get out, go hiking, go camping, is to say that like, okay, this is what like, this is stuff that's, basically what the romantics were doing, right? To see like, oh, look, this is great, gorgeous, like sort of like awe-inspiring, somewhat frightening thing, right? To feel so alive again. But then again, we still take our Fitbits so we can track how many steps we're taking, make sure we're still getting good sleep and hitting our macros while we're like out there. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, it's just this weird.
No, this is actually spot on the what this is about. And again, I'm also kind of still, as we say in Germany, I'm kind of swimming or trying to figure out how to swim in this project. But it is about these things. It's about the traffic and the weather being sort of forces that you cannot control. And modern society, in a lot of ways, is about controlling everything, right? And I mean, we already talked about having maybe the next forum on AI, or next two forums maybe on AI. And then we just, before we started the recording, we also talked about the recent statements of the Pope on AI, where he also talks about transhumanism and longevity. And all of these things are basically sort of attempts to control nature in a lot of ways too, right? I mean, people have been dreaming about controlling the weather since ages, right? But the question also is this really a good thing? Do we want this? And then, yes, occasionally we go out and be the romantics and be like, oh, let's be one with nature. And then we're happy when we're back in our nice apartments with air condition and heating. And yes, so I'm also not good actually.
Well, yeah. Well, because that's the thing, right? Like, the state of nature is beautiful until you realize that, like, oh, I don't really want to deal with like 50% child mortality. That seems bad. Like, you know, like, it seems like, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe this is like a broader sort of existential topic, but the other question is like, I mean, like, is there in a sense like democracy doesn't quite work at these scales? Because like, if you think about like the history of democracy, right? It started off with like with Athens, like, you know, pseudo democracy. Like, and then you had the Roman Republic, and then you had this huge long period where there was just basically no democracy, right? I guess 255th birthday of like America's independence is coming up, and like one of the things when it first happened was that people basically said like, this can't work on like a republic scale. And I think, yeah, there is, I mean, maybe you can make the argument that right now like American democracy isn't working at all for anybody, right? Whether you're like right or left, it's like it doesn't seem to be working. Like, do you get that sense that like maybe democracy just doesn't scale to like our current city state level, and we're just kind of like coasting off of like basically the aftermath of World War II and the Cold War and all that, even with all the advances in technology?
Oh yeah, that's a big question. Well, okay, so where I'm at with my thinking right now is, and where this project kind of originates, and why there's, you know, why it hangs together with like Hannah Arendt and necessity and Emerson and Thoreau, is in a way that I see the goal, or one of the major goals of democracy, to make freedom possible, right, for people in a particular community, and to reconcile or figure out the problem of different people have different ideas and dreams and wishes on how they want to live, and democracy is sort of a way of making that possible, that we kind of do that together as a group. But I think in order for democracy to work, you have an institutional democracy, so you have certain laws. You have a constitution. We don't. We have basic law, but it's similar in kind, right? Basic principles that make it liberal in a sense that protects individual political freedoms. But I do think that the Habermas, you do need people who are also already political democracy presupposes a certain freedom at the individual level, which is existentialist, right? So you need to have people who do talk to one another, because otherwise you cannot figure out what are the different conceptions of life that you want to reconcile, right? You do need to figure out what's the critique. If people are just all like become more and more private and retreat behind their screens, I think democracy cannot work in the long run, because then the laws by themselves will not do the job. That's the intuition behind this whole project. So that's why the idea is maybe we got to figure out, actually, does it help to slow down by just walking like what I'm doing? Does it make a real qualitative difference? And again, we also had the difficulty, we don't reach people online anymore. So I was like, I just go there. I just walk to them.
I was thinking a couple of things. Like, one is, It's funny. When Jason was talking, I was thinking like it's interesting that you're in a, I would imagine like a rural space, because typically rural areas also don't map well with democracy. Like, you mentioned, Athens and Greece, those are urban-ish areas where democracy emerges. Um, you can think now around the world, the populist right is very strong in rural areas, if you consider that authoritarian. You have the yeoman myth in the United States, but it's also mapped onto it's a myth, and it's mapped onto a slave society, which is not democratic. These are all rural, there's a lot of rural things that are not democratic. And I'm wondering, I'm just thinking about that, thinking about what Jason was saying, but then I'm thinking of also like slowing down. I think it's an interesting idea. Like, how do we think about slow, like pace? I think that's cool. I can see that helping with deliberation and thinking and reflection. Then I'm wondering, like, why don't you mention going to bars? It sounds like bars are a great place to slow down. You don't need to be in nature to go to a bar either. I mean, you can go to a bar and you don't have to be drunk either, but you can go to a bar and just face to face talk anywhere, right? I need to find a specific kind of bar too, though. I mean, I can imagine going to bars and it's very loud, and it's the opposite of slowing things down.
So, all right, I got this is a perfect point. First of all, real quick on the rural thing, I mean, there were also town hall meetings in rural areas before the United States even existed, right? And those were sort of like real direct democracy type things, right? And in some, they also been an inspiration for this project. The second point is a really really good one. I'm really glad you bring this up, because I have been to bars. I told that anecdote earlier. That bar, actually, I saw on Google Maps on my phone by chance. And I was like, this looks weird, like a weird place. They have no food, nothing. I went there. It was kind of like almost like a living room, I thought. I thought it was closed. I just like tried to open the door and it opened. And there were these six people max in there. And I talked to later when that thing happened, I talked to the owner and I was like, so, and he was like, well, I got to close at 10 because I actually got to go drive out bakery goods at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing a bar? And he was like, well, there used to be 10 bars here in this area, and now there's none. And that's why I'm doing this. And he's having his 20th anniversary in January next year. And I said, I'll come back for that anniversary and celebrate it with you because I'm not walking it. But yeah, that has been a theme throughout the last 4 weeks. People everywhere. The campground I came from yesterday, he was like, there were 16 bars and restaurants in our village because I've come through villages here and they look dead. This is like one of the most heavily trafficked tourist areas in Germany. And there's some towns here, I was shocked. And other hikers were like, did you notice something weird? Isn't this weird here? It's like half the stores are closed. There's like one restaurant that's open. Everything else is shut down. And the campground owner, and he was struggling, right? He was like, yeah, so yes, one should go to bars. And I have made an effort to do that, but it's harder and harder to find.
I mean, is it like a demographic collapse issue like it is in Japan? Because like one thing anecdotal I've noticed is like when I was growing up, right, I could always just grab like 3 or 4 friends and just start like a D&D or role-playing session. My dad was growing up, they could just, kids on the street could just start like a soccer game or like, well, they didn't play baseball, but yeah, a soccer game. Right, my nieces, like, they have to arrange play dates. They have to like, because they just aren't kids. You just can't go down the street and be like, hey, let's go do something, because there's literally just no kids. And like I don't know to what extent like that, because I'm more familiar with what's happening in Japan in terms of like where you have literally entire villages just depopulate. They don't exist anymore. Like, and I don't know to what extent that's like a demographic thing, or if it's just like people don't want to do it, or third places are dying, or what it is exactly.
Here,
well,
can I jump into what James said?
Yeah.
It's like, I think there's a couple of things I think are really interesting, James, because I think like, or sorry, Jason. Because I think what Tim what you were saying was very maps onto a lot of what people say about rural areas of the United States, like less bars, less car dealerships, less you mentioned town hall meetings, less rural organizations across the board. I can go into detail on all that stuff in rural areas in Wisconsin and elsewhere. I can say that, and it's interesting because some of the people who are in farm and rural movements who are like pro democracy and all these things, what they refer to actually is not some like natural reality. They actually refer to government policy. Like there was a time in the early 20th century, FDR policies that really helped rural areas. It's anything but natural that there was a thriving rural economy in the United States. It was, that's something that's a pretty common, I think, thing that people refer to, at least in rural areas of the United States. And also lamenting its decline. The thing about the demographic collapse too, it's funny you mentioned that, because in Japan, I don't know, but I know in California, in rural Wisconsin, I would say that that's true. We lived here during the pandemic and there's no kids here. And when I was growing up, there was lots of kids here. But in California, I also noticed that there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood that we live in, but I also noticed that like people, the way that homes are created, at least the way that they're set up now, is that there's no front yards. There's just the road and a door, and then people have backyards. So when my kids want to play, they got to go to the house, knock on the door, and find out if they're there. And they may be there, but it's because they're hiding, or rather, like they're isolated, like they're alone. The families, they don't play in the front yard naturally. They choose to go in the back. And my wife, who's from Mexico, says that's weird, and that's a cultural thing. Like she thinks that's because, like, in Mexico, kids are running around, but in California, they're like hidden. So that's just some comments. That's I was thinking when you were thinking. I was thinking about what you were saying.
Yeah, on the demographic thing, I'm not. I don't think it's demographic issues here. It's a money issue. And we've talked to people, we talked to somebody at a youth hostel, because the youth hostels here are completely booked, solid. I couldn't get a spot. And the reason is that one person who worked there said it's that people have a lot less money than 5 years ago. That was his personal impression. That's also what the campground owner yesterday told me. He was like, well, you can't make money if people don't have money to spend. And there was a castle, beautiful castle, up like 200 meters above the campground, and I had to walk past there on my way there. And there were people with like Porsche outside drinking champagne, and it's a super fancy hotel there. So that happens. But yeah, the campgrounds are they're full of campers, like mobiles, because this is a way for people to afford their vacation, right? They can't do the hotels anymore. And you see a lot of hotels here shut down. You see restaurants shut down. A lot of people mention things have gotten really bad since COVID. So that maybe that's going to reverse. Going out to eat is too expensive for people. They can't afford it anymore. So yes, so then the bars are shutting down and closing. The one thing, conversation I overheard in another bar, and I overhear stuff. I listen to stuff too, because I don't have a partner to converse with sometimes, and I just sit there and hear a lot of stories. Where a community, like there was a small town, and the community decided to just raise the fees for using the town hall. And the people were saying like that none of the nonprofits that were doing events at this town hall could afford it anymore. So they were like, so we're going to shut it down. Right. So there's some vicious cycle. Like, I guess communities are, they're really tight financially, and then they need to raise the fees, and then others can't afford it, and then communal life kind of comes to a halt. And that's obviously a problem. The thing is, I was in hills outside of Cologne where they offered me the guest room, That's a tiny 100 people village. And it was actually maybe one of the most thriving places I've seen on my whole trip. So maybe it is a sort of a particular scale issue too. And then also luck and some people. There was somebody organizing things. There were 2 other people engaged, and they had a barn that they could use. And they were like, hey, if you want to do the thing there, they came prepare it. Somebody was from the local parties came over. Somebody else brought drinks. And then again, I got invited to the guest room. And after I left, they were like, we're going to meet once a month now. And basically it's not a bar because they can't have a bar. They don't have a license, but they're just going to meet there and people bring their own drinks. But yes, it's that's something I hear everywhere. And from all kinds of people. Today in the bakery, old couple. There was no seats left. I was like, you can sit here. And they were like, what are you doing? And blah, blah, blah. We got into a conversation and talking of people. We don't talk enough anymore with one another. And they were like, yes, absolutely. It's terrible. And this is kind of like my whole spiel on the crisis of the West, right? It's not just a crisis of democracy. It's not necessarily, and I heard a lot of people nod their heads at this. It's not a question of which party or which candidate or president or chancellor. It's a deeper problem that we're having. It's a problem that society is having in the modern Western world. And it's not gonna, I mean, it's not gonna be solved by having the right party in power, even though that might be nice too. So, yes, maybe that's a good time, good moment to stop for now. Again, for those watching this, we discussed to do the next conversation maybe on AI and actually introduce it in a sort of maybe unusual way, namely how AI can create freedom or help individuals to become more autonomous. And actually, I have some anecdotes on how it helps me on this project, weirdly enough, which seems counterintuitive. For now, I want to say thanks, Jason and Anthony. This has been, as usual, very stimulating. And to everyone else watching in front of this evil screen, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you during the next episode. Bye.